Hello everyone and welcome to an incredible game that just happened in round 2 of the Tata Still Chess India Blitz edition. It is Magnus Carlsen versus Praggnanandhaa. Magnus crushed everyone in the rapid section. He won 2 full points ahead of the lead, and now he already started the Blitz section by a very nice win against Narayanan. Now he takes on Praggnanandhaa, and after watching the Mike Tyson fight, I just feel very happy watching a champion playing, something that he's really good at in his prime. So let's check it out. Magnus with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to c6. Pragg goes for the Caro-Kann, knight f3, knight, pawn to d5, and pawn to d3. And Pragg just goes bishop to g4. Now, interestingly, this position occurs quite a lot as d3 is becoming more popular and popular, and the d captures on e4 is the top move recommended by the engine. And if you play this online and, well, let's say you're rated below 2000, you can get a lot of easy victories with white. For example, if d captures on e4, you can go knight g5, sacrifice another pawn, and after captures and captures, a lot of times your opponents will just go h6, and they can resign. Knight captures on f7, and that's it. They lose material, or if they capture, you just give a nice check here, and you pick up the queen. So it happens so often that it's hard to even count. But in case you're, just starting out, or like I said, even if you're like 21, 22, 100, maybe even 23, it can still happen like Bullet and Blitz. But okay, bishop g4. Pragg goes for a much different line, of course, h3, bishop to h5, and now queen to e2. All standard squares for white's pieces in this setup. Pawn to e6, nicely putting pawns on light squares, as you've already developed your light square bishop, and pawn to g4. We have bishop to g6 and pawn to h4. Magnus wants to play pawn to h5 and trap the bishop. So, of course, d captures on e4, d captures and pawn to h5. Just, creating a square for the bishop, and also putting pressure on g4. So pawn to g5, Magnus grabs more space, controls f6 now, and knight to d7. We have knight b to d2 and queen to c7. And here, there is a game where bishop to g2 was played. Magnus just goes pawn to b3, and it is now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game. So chances are Magnus will be castling queenside, his bishops will come to, let's say, b2 and h3, and that will be the game. So let's see what Pragg does. He goes knight to e5, offers a trade of knights, and just bishop to b2. Developing with tempo, the knight is now hanging, so bishop to d6, defending, and castles queenside. Pragg goes knight to e7, leaving the possibility of castling kingside as well as queenside, and Magnus avoids the trade with knight to e2 and prepares to kick away the knight with pawn to f4. Pragg castles queenside, and Magnus just goes bishop to h3. He could go pawn to f4 right away, but he has a very clear idea of what to do, and it is a blitz game. Both of them are already down to 1.5 minutes. King to b8, getting off of this diagonal, and now king to b1. Also a nice prophylactic move by Magnus. And the problem is, how does Pragg meet pawn to f4? It's a simple threat. Pawn to f4 kicks away the knight, Magnus wins the pawn, and then Magnus wins the game. You don't play against an up upon Magnus. So the problem with defending the pawn is that there is just too much stuff on this diagonal, believe it or not. Let's say you just play rook to g8. It's a crazy position. Let's say rook to f1. What can Pragg play? Not a lot of squares. This pawn really doing an awesome job keeping the knight at bay. Rook here stuck guarding the pawn. This rook not all that much to do. Also, what do you play? Let's say you try to remaneuver the knight. Knight to d7. All of a sudden, knight to c4. Attacks the bishop, and once the bishop moves, let's say bishop to h2, pawn to f4. Attacks the bishop again, and the real threat in the position is, like I said, there is too much stuff on this diagonal. After you play bishop captures on f4, which should be possible, as the queen is defending the f4 square, rook captures on f4. And after queen captures, now you just eliminate the defender of the e5 square. Rook captures on d7, and black resigns. That is the true problem with Pragg's position. After rook captures, bishop to e5 picks up the queen. So that's the problem. So Pragg has to give up the pawn and try to consolidate in some way. Knight to c8 by Pragg, and Magnus goes pawn to f4. Attacks the knight, knight to g4, captures, and now just wins a pawn. Bishop captures on g7, rook to h7, and now bishop just goes back. Bishop to f6, attacks the rook, rook to d7, and now knight to c4, again putting pressure on that bishop on d6. And there's still a whole lot of pressure on this diagonal, but at least for the moment, the bishop here is defended 3 times, so it shouldn't be an issue. Bishop captures on f4. This is what Pragg plays, but it is not enough. Look at this. Knight to d3 attacks the bishop, bishop to g3, and now even knight to c5. And now, look at this. Rook captures on d1, rook captures on d1, and knight to d6. Again, should be possible because the knight is sufficiently defended, but not when your opponent is Magnus. Magnus just plays knight captures on d6, bishop captures on d6, and there is a move that completely obliterates Pragg. Feel free to pause the video and try to find this idea while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on noticing that the knight on c5 actually defends the e5 square. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is rook captures on d6. This is what Magnus played, and he was in this position on move 26 that Praggnanandhaa resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. How does the knight defend the e5 square to help out with bishop to e5? Well, it's actually very simple. Queen captures on d6, bishop to e5, and this is how the knight guards it by a tactic. If queen captures, knight to d7 check, forks the king and the queen, and that's it. King moves, knight captures. Magnus would have a queen for a rook, and of course that is completely winning. So yeah, a very nice victory for Magnus in round 1, also taking down Pragg in round 2, and I think Magnus is now very, very close, like almost 2,900 in Blitz rating, in live ratings. Let me just check out the live ratings real quickly. I don't want to trick you guys. Yeah, in live ratings, Magnus is 2896. So, you know, if he does well, he could break 2,900 in this event, no problem. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. A lot of games being played. These are Blitz games, you know, so many being played, so I can't cover all of them, but I might even cover more than one in one video. So if you have a favorite, use that hashtag suggestion and I will go over them. Maybe I show like one the way I do, and then maybe briefly go over them like I did, you know, a couple of tournaments ago. So yeah, do share it. And also, if you haven't seen my podcast, well, a short podcast, maybe like a bit over an hour, with Nolan Arbau, do check it out. Will be the first link in the description below. I would like to thank Ranko Djogasevich, Robert Kiefer, Jeffrey Johnson, Yusuf Evelyn, and Dan McCormick for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this fine event until it finishes. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.